Do you want to hear something I did?
Yeah.
Are you ready for this?
Yeah. Tell me.
Welcome to See You on the Other Side.
That's the first time we've said it.
And we're doing it. And this is it. We're your hosts, Leah
And Christine.
And we just wanted to give you guys a little bit of a background about who we are and why we're doing this podcast. And hopefully it'll get some ears perked and you guys will be intrigued and want to keep listening. So
let's talk about our relationship and how we met and how we formed our friendship and go into that. And
it's such a beautiful story. So Christine and I have known each other for 8 years?
8 years, yep.
And it started out you being a client of mine. Mm-hmm. A little bit of background about what I do. I wax eyebrows. I own a waxing boutique and have for quite a while. And she came to me as a client.
And what I loved about coming to you is I am not a fan of superficial conversations. And so right away when we met, there was an instant connection. And even when you would wax my eyebrows for 20 minutes, we would have some of the best conversations. And so I would almost sometimes not purposely, because I wanted them for myself, but do eyelashes or add on extra services.
For more time?
Yep.
Yeah.
Because I enjoyed it and I felt like there was good back and forth and we went deep with stuff quick and we relate to each other on a lot of things, our childhood and trauma and, we're both empaths. So yeah, we bonded very, very quickly.
And the funny thing about that is it's been 8 years of kind of like that type of relationship where you opened a gym.
Yes.
And I started coming to your gym.
Yep.
And we had that back and forth, like you came to see me, I came to see you.
But we never hung out.
Ever. We talked, we texted.
All the time. And I think too, the reason why we did that is because we are empaths and I wasn't aware of it for a majority of my life and you weren't either.
Same.
A lot of people were very draining to me. And I think both of us had a mutual respect for each other's boundaries. And another factor is I appreciated our friendship so much. I didn't want it to change or get tainted or you to be sick of me or me to be sick of you. So I never wanted to cross that boundary. And also I like when people are very respectful of that. I love to be at home and I like to be with my family in my pajamas or sweatpants or whatever. And you never put pressure on me to show up in a certain way for you.
That was mutual. For sure.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that you and I understood where we stood with each other.
Yes.
It wasn't like I wasn't letting you in. We had a connection that I have with very few people, but it's almost like that was enough.
Yeah. And what's interesting is I think that people feel like they have to hang out all the time to like have a bond. But most people, when they hang out, it's usually around drinking or a lot of other people. So there's not necessarily a deep connection there right away where we had moments where we were alone and it was just convenient for us because it was me at work or you at work. And we did go deep quick and we did have a lot of amazing, beautiful conversations where we would laugh or a lot of times we would cry and about certain things that happened to us or, just life struggles. And I cherish that.
Well, and I also I hate that you went through a lot of the same things that I went through owning a business. But I loved having someone who understood what it was like having employees and owning a business, and especially during COVID.
And especially as an empath.
Yes. So there were so many parallels in our lives that bonded us and connected us. So I guess I should give a little bit of a bio about why we wanted to start this podcast, because 2 years ago, during COVID, right in the thick of it. I guess it started in March of 2020, right?
Yeah.
Both of our businesses got shut down.
For 3 months. Mine was 12 weeks. What was yours?
I feel like mine was, you opened, I think, not that long after us.
Yeah.
It was probably a good 3 months.
Yep.
And
Tough.
before we went back to business, before our business opened, I had managed to get into the world of mushrooms. I don't know how else to say that. It happened very quickly. It happened. Well, let me rewind a little bit, because I had a podcast before about weed and cannabis and its place in my life. And we interviewed someone about mushrooms, and it just rocked my fucking world. Like, learning all the things that she was talking about, I started going down a rabbit hole after that. Like, what else do I not know about this? Like, I had no idea. Here I am, like, in my 30s, like, I'm a mom, I don't do drugs, and now I'm smoking weed. And, you know, so it just kind of got my brain going. Like, what would this do for me? Like, how would this help? Like, the weed helps my anxiety, but if she's saying this has, like, healing properties, like, what the I'm so fucking broken, I need healed. So I did a very large mushroom trip right before we reopened. So June of 2020 is when I did it. I don't even know how to describe what it did for my life, but it's been almost 2 years since that, and my life it looks so different. My relationship, my marriage, my business, my outlook, everything about my life has shifted and changed for the better.
Yeah.
In that 2 years. And we didn't really talk about that. We did, but we didn't. We texted back and forth about little things. And I feel like it's something hard. You don't really just jump in and say, like, yeah, so I did mushrooms and my life is great. Like, you should join.
Well, and I didn't know anything about that world. I mean, in high school and college, I was someone who is actually incredibly judgmental about anyone who used cannabis.
Same.
I was such a little asshole about it. And it was because that was what was taught to me,
Yeah.
right? So I was taught to believe that. So I just believed it blindly, and I didn't do any of my own research. And then someone introduced me to cannabis. And when I opened Six Packs, I've always had anxiety, but it got much, much worse. And my panic attacks got much, much worse. And cannabis was a way for me to go to sleep and to just feel just calm and at ease. But the problem with that is I wasn't fixing the root of the problem. Now, it would help me calm down, but I remember one night telling Tony, who's my fiance, I wish I didn't have to take this to feel like myself and to feel relaxed. And that's where I was like, okay, I need to do more. And then we had texted. I actually won a bracelet in a giveaway that Leah makes jewelry, and I had won. And so we had met up for lunch. And when I saw you, I was like, wow. Obviously, there was a physical transformation there.
Yeah.
But it was more than that. I just saw a much more peaceful, happy Leah.
And we hadn't seen each other in 2 years.
Yeah, and we hadn't seen each other in 2 years. So we had a great conversation. I was just like, you just look amazing, but also it's more than that. You just look happy. And I remember you telling me, I am, and I'm just at peace with myself. And that's the transformation. And I was like, bitch, what the fuck are you doing? Because I want to get on that right now.
It's like, yeah, so about that.
So, fortunately for you, or fortunately that I had you, and you gave me a lot of information to this whole world that I didn't know anything about. And I watched documentaries, read articles, Johns Hopkins, and Harvard and Yale, and all this information about psychedelics, and kind of did my own research. And I ended up doing a trip as well with a guide in a safe place and someone I felt very, very comfortable with and who I knew. And it was life-changing. I've always had anxiety. I grew up with abuse, and I always thought that I would feel a certain way. And it's like mushrooms rewired my brain and gave me this confidence within myself that I think I was good. I think from the outside looking in, a lot of people thought that I was confident and, this badass, tough, whatever, because I own a gym and I'm a boxer and all this stuff. So surface level, that's what it looked like. But
you look like you've got your shit together.
Yeah, but there was a huge inner turmoil there, absolutely, with myself. And doing that trip made me have almost like a quieter confidence. Like I don't have anything to prove to anybody else. And there was a lot of self-hatred before, where afterwards I genuinely had this love for myself and grace for the mistakes in the past, and just a different outlook on life and others, and the things that have happened to me in my trauma. But it rewired my brain, and I currently don't suffer from anxiety or panic attacks, and I feel just happy and at peace, and I love myself, and I don't think that there are many people who can say that confidently
and mean it.
It's just a really, really beautiful place to be in. So
rewind it just a little bit, because I think that one of the things I noticed after my mushroom trip, because I was still doing this podcast about weed.
Oh yeah.
And I started to feel like an imposter in that world, because I stopped smoking as much as I was. And I used it for the same reasons. Like it was my escape. It was what I did to feel good, to get out of my head at the end of the week. And then after my first mushroom experience, it just kind of, my relationship shifted. And
I don't feel dependent on it anymore.
Yes.
And I think that's the big thing.
I still use it for social situations. I still don't see anything wrong with it.
No.
But I was starting to become dependent on the way that it made me feel, the way that it got me out of my headspace. And like what you said, it was really a Band-Aid for me. And I knew there had to be another way. It's interesting because even though my mushroom experience started 2 years ago, it's almost like it opened my mind to so much more. I don't want to say I was judgmental of people when they smoked weed before, because I did in high school and I did in college. I started getting judgmental about it when I became a mom, because I have 3 kids, and I was like, moms don't do that. Moms don't do drugs. We drink wine. And, even that little bit of like, well, why are you judging me? Like, you do the same thing just with a different substance. And this is healthier for me. Like, I black out when I drink. I don't like that feeling of not being in charge. And when I smoke, I just laugh and I giggle and I have a good time. Yep. And I'm not hurting anybody, and it makes me a better person. So that whole shift started to happen where I was like, I'm not smoking as much anymore. This is weird. Like, I shouldn't be talking about it as much as I am, even though I still believe it should be destigmatized. And we fought for the legalities of it. We lobbied for it to be medicinally legal. I just have a shift in perspective. But because I started to open my mind to like these other alternatives, I went down a rabbit hole. Like, I did kind of what I started reading so much about what I didn't know. And the things you thought you knew, where you're like, who told us that though?
That's what was crazy to me, is I had all of these misconceptions in my head. And I think a lot of people do, because why wouldn't you? Because that's what you're taught.
It's illegal.
Or it's almost like this taboo thing that you don't even talk about.
Yeah.
I was never educated on mushrooms, and I wasn't educated on it because who's going to educate me on it? They're like, most adults aren't educated on it. There's a lot of misconceptions.
You have to look for it. You kind of have to look for it yourself. And once I started looking for it, I realized there's like a whole world out there of people who do this and who know this. And I'm like, why didn't anybody tell me?
Well, there's a lot of reasons, but we'll get into that on a different episode.
Because I wasn't open to it. And once you open your mind to something, it's almost like you receive all of this information that you didn't know was out there. But I do my research before I do these things.
And that's what's so interesting, because alcohol is so normalized. I come from a family on both my mom and my dad's side of alcoholics. I was around it. I didn't enjoy it. Even in high school and even in college, yes, I drank a lot in high school. I'm originally from Iowa, and that's all we did.
Small towns are like that.
I know. They really are. And so, that's what everybody did. So I did it too. And I always felt a lot of shame. I never was someone who handled my alcohol well at all. I would, black out, or I was a big puker and would get sick, which I attribute that to having Asian glow, where we are missing an enzyme that digests alcohol.
I didn't know that.
Yep. And so I could never handle it well. I didn't really enjoy it. Even if I didn't do anything or didn't drink that much, it would give me a lot of anxiety the next day, and I would feel a lot of shame and guilt. But then I would do it again because that's what you do. You're in college and you go to the bars and you hang out with your friends and you drink on Friday and Saturday, maybe Thursday. It's just so normalized. And so I just did it because everybody else did it.
Yeah.
Where, with mushrooms, it was obviously a much different setting. It was me and my guide, but I felt very broken at that time. And like I didn't have a purpose. And I felt like with mushrooms, they made me feel like not my old self, almost like a new self. And I'm learning who I am, the authentic me, not anyone that my parents or peers or teachers, coaches, whatever, tried to shape me to be, or what I felt like was cool or popular. I'm now learning who I am, truly my authentic self.
Yes.
For the first time ever. And that's honestly really fucking amazing.
That's why I'm like, this has to be talked about, because there's some dark sides to it. We'll get into all of that, like the bad trips and the setting, and dosage is huge. And so many people, don't do it the right way.
Yeah.
I'm not being pretentious about that. It's just the truth. Like, there can be beauty and so much growth in doing it with the right intention and in the right setting and doing it with the right person. And I think so many of us are trying to find that in other things and not knowing how to find it. But what I love about this is that I'm watching you almost, I don't want to say following I don't want to say that because that sounds very influential, and I'm not an influence in this type of way, but you're where I was 2 years ago.
I know.
Like, where it's just like, holy shit, this is amazing. Why is nobody talking about this? Why hasn't everybody done this? And I'm 2 years into this beautiful but very difficult journey at the same time, because it's not a quick fix.
You have to integrate it, and that's huge too.
That's the hardest part for a lot of people, is integrating whatever it was that their experience taught them and applying it to their everyday life, and not thinking that one thing is going to fix you, but realizing that like, oh, I have to do that. Like, yeah. I have to do the work. So it's been a very difficult but also amazing and beautiful 2 years coming out and finding who I am as a person and loving me and learning to love me authentically, same as you. Like, I'm like, holy shit, I had no idea this is who I was.
Well, we are often using Band-Aids, alcohol, antidepressants, anti-anxiety medicine to help weed to help ease pain or make us feel better. But with mushrooms, I had to go to the root of the problem.
Yes.
And it's almost like I was at the bottom of the mountain and I faced that mountain and climbed up to the top onto the other side.
And that it's why we have the name that we have. There's so many connections to this, and there's so many parallels. It's like, it blows my mind, honestly, how we came up with this, because when I first came out of my trip, I didn't have someone to talk to who had experienced it in this way.
And I can't imagine that. I genuinely can't imagine that, because you have been such a safe space for me to talk and be like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like, how did I not know about this? I feel so good. And I feel not like it's a Band-Aid, but that I'm actually healing, and I felt like I rewired my brain.
Yeah. You did.
I did.
It's that simple. It really is. But it's nobody in my circle, nobody in my family, nobody in my friends groups had done this before. I was the only one. So while I did have my guide, she and I weren't like friends on that level. Right. I couldn't reach out to her and say, this is what's happening. Is this normal? And it took one of my really closest friends, it took her like 6 months to do it. And so I felt like after she did it, I was like, oh my God, finally somebody who gets it, somebody I can talk to about this. And It took my husband almost a year to do it. And that was a shift. But I felt like after I had done them, and this is still in the middle of COVID, so there wasn't a lot of people that I was hanging out with in any way. But I felt like I was on this cloud.
And you're not saying that in a pretentious way.
No, I didn't know how else to describe it, but I just wanted to look at people and be like, you need to come up here. The view from up here is so much better. I promise you it's so much better. And you're stuck down there and I want to help you and I want to throw you this lifeline and I want you to do this and just come up here on the cloud with me because life is gorgeous up here, but nobody would do it. And you came to me and
excited. I was like a little puppy.
And the name. So, oh gosh, there's a meditation that I listen to before I do a trip. And at the very end of the meditation, he says, and it's specifically for doing guided trips. And he says, see you on the other side. And then after you had done yours, what were you watching?
I was on the treadmill and I was watching a Goop episode with, Gwyneth Paltrow's company where does she take them to Costa Rica?
It's either Costa Rica or Jamaica. I can't remember.
And some of her employees do a psychedelic trip. And right before, the guide says, see you on the other side. And I texted you and I'm like, that's it. That's our podcast name, because not only does that pertain to mushrooms, but it just pertains to life. Because oftentimes, before when I owned a gym, I posted motivational stuff all the time. Mm-hmm. And, a lot of times people gravitated towards me because I made them feel confident and strong and like they could do anything. But the energy that I was putting into them, I was not putting that into myself at all. And how can I give people that if I'm not doing it for myself? Like, I got to fill my cup up first before I can give you what I have.
Yeah. And
so now when I do post stuff, I'm actually living it. I'm not just posting about it. And, I did believe those things before.
Right.
But now there is like
a connection.
Yes, there's a connection to what I post because I'm actually doing it. And I do feel, we're always evolving and we're always healing. But like I said, for the first time ever, I feel like I'm living an authentically happy life.
That is where I think the connection is, like the rewire happens because you know these things and you preach these things. So I did the same thing. I would post all these like super motivational mental health things. And it was like I didn't get it though until...
You know what I attribute that to is both of us grew up with child trauma. And a lot of times when you grow up in child trauma, you are living in survival mode your whole life.
Yeah.
And it is very hard. And, we both go to therapy. I go to an energy healer. We were doing the work, but that takes a lot of time to get out of that, where now I just feel like I can just be myself. I'm not living in that survival fight or flight mode all the time, because I was always very much so on edge and very easily triggered by people and always had anxiety and didn't even know that I was depressed. But we had talked about this. I 100% was depressed because I had this mentality of like, this is how I'm always going to feel. This is how my life is always going to be. I'm always going to feel like there's something missing in me or my life, or I just never felt whole. I tried to do the work and I tried to do the things, but I never felt whole. And there was, when you do grow up with abuse, there was, I suppressed a lot of things. I used humor to joke about the abuse that I had gone through, or that I didn't have a relationship with my father. He wasn't present in my life. And I would use humor to make my friends laugh. Now, it made them feel uncomfortable, but I didn't know how to express it in a healthy way. So I either joked about it or I suppressed it, where I think this is now an amazing platform where we can talk about it and we can talk about our trauma and the things that have happened to us and how it shaped us as an adult. Because usually what you needed to survive as a child is what's going to hurt you as an adult. Yes. You need to let that go.
Yeah.
And mushrooms helped me let that go.
there's also this feeling of when you start the journey to healing, it's a lifelong journey. And that sounds overwhelming to say, I'm going to have to be doing this the rest of my life.
Yeah.
The mushrooms for me felt like 10 years of therapy.
Yes.
In a few hours.
Yes.
And we were seeking that journey, that path to healing, and we were on it. But there was something we had to break through.
Yeah. Yes.
And it was ourselves.
Yes.
And I feel like when we did our mushroom trips, we broke through to the other side of that. And we realized what was holding us back from not even continuing to heal, but actually working on that.
And it was us.
It was us.
And the good and the bad thing about doing mushrooms is afterwards, I saw things for what they were, not for what I wanted them to be. Because with anxiety, I felt like I had to control certain situations. And if I didn't feel like I was in control, again, child trauma, I felt very uneasy. I didn't like chaos. I didn't like any of that. Where with mushrooms, I saw things for how they were not what I wanted them to be. And also I had to learn to respond differently than how I used to always respond. So I'm learning now, being kind of a newbie to this, that my circle has gotten smaller. My boundaries have gotten much firmer. People don't always like when you change or when you evolve or when you have boundaries and are firm in those boundaries because they benefited. And they weren't maybe doing it in a malicious way.
No, it's subconsciously.
Absolutely. But they benefited from a broken you.
Yeah.
Because I was a people pleaser and I wanted people to like me.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be popular and I wanted to fit in and I wanted to, I feel like very normal feelings that most of us, we want to belong.
Yeah.
Where now I'm like, I love being different. I love, like, the goal isn't to fit in, because if I do that, I'm obviously not living authentically to myself.
Right.
So the circle has gotten smaller, but I'm at peace with it. I'm okay with that because the people that I do have, they're rock solid. And I love that.
And you also have a different connection with yourself.
Yeah.
So it's almost like those external factors don't really matter anymore, because what matters is what you think of yourself and how you love yourself and how you perceive yourself. And those other people that you were pleasing before, to have that external factor like come in and like be like, I like you, you're cool. Like, you don't need that anymore because you have it in yourself.
Right. So anyone who's with me, they add to it.
Yes.
Because I can be okay on my own. I've got this. And there is this inner quiet confidence within me. So anyone else that's around me, they're adding to it.
Yeah. And
there are, obviously there are people that you have to be around in situations, and maybe they are draining or whatever. But now I'm much, much better at compartmentalizing that and not letting it come home with me, because that was a huge problem when I owned my gym. Is people would vent to me about their marriages and divorces and their trauma and just everything, and it was very one-sided always. I was very very cautious of who I truly opened myself up to and talked about the things that had happened to me in my childhood or trauma, where now I have much, much firmer boundaries, where I'm not doing a one-sided friendship or relationship anymore. It's got to add to it. I'm not going to take it home. And I can love people and be empathetic towards people, but it's also their journey and their responsibility to heal. I can't take that on for them. And that's the big thing that I've had to learn too.
Is that something new? Is that since mushrooms that you've been able to?
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Because that's a little backstory is, with COVID and the last probably year and a half that I owned my business, I was very, very stressed out. My nervous system was out of whack and I was very unhappy. And so I had a lot of health issues that came with it. I had a UTI for about a year long. and I started to develop rashes all over my body and my neck and my eyes and my face. And it's almost like the stress caught up to me and I didn't realize it, because when you're in it, sometimes it's hard to be aware of that because you're just so deep into that like black hole. And so I kept going to all of these doctors and these specialists and a holistic doctor, and doctors were, and myself included, were looking at all of these factors like, oh, well, maybe it's this, and maybe you have lupus or some type of an autoimmune disease or whatever. And it was stress, and I think it was trauma that I had just suppressed in my body for all these years. And my body was saying, like, you need to do something, and you need to heal, and you need to rest, and you need to take care of you. And it got to the point where I couldn't hide it anymore. I couldn't suppress it anymore. And luckily I had talked to you and I had done mushrooms, and all of that had gone away because I actually did self-care, like true self-care, not just getting facials and massages
Manicures.
and getting a mani and a pedi, which those are also forms
Right.
of self-care. But it was,
You were healing.
yeah.
Like all of those other things, I want to talk about that in one of our episodes. I mean, here's the thing, like we're going to talk about a lot.
Yeah.
A lot. And being on the other side of healing. And I don't mean that to say we're healed. Like, I think everybody is broken. I think everybody has trauma, whether you think you do or not. Like, you're holding on
absolutely.
to stuff. And that's something that I've realized in the past couple of years is a lot of people who hold it on, they either suppress it or they project it.
Yeah.
And I was getting the brunt of a lot of that suppression and projection, and I was letting it affect me.
Yep.
So it kept me broken. But getting on the other side of healing, and I mean that in like, as I was trying to say this, like you're never done. It's a constant work, but it's not as overwhelming as that sounds. I'm making it sound like you're always going to have to be working on yourself.
I think the thing with after mushrooms, before it was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to talk about the things that happened to me as a child, and I'm going to have to figure out why it was daunting.
Yeah.
Where
it seems
now-
like a dark place.
Yeah.
That nobody wants to go.
Right, because it's hard
Yeah.
and it's scary. And with mushrooms, I faced those demons and I overcame them, and that's what helped me become confident with myself and love myself. And now I have this mentality of I can get through anything. And when I was in the peak of my trip, I kept telling myself, you got this, you got this. So anytime I need a little pep talk, I'm like, you got this. Like you can literally do anything. And so it's not as daunting anymore as like the dread of like trying to like fix yourself and trying to heal. It's all not an excitement but it's almost like I'm open to it and I accept it, whatever comes at me.
Yeah. It's a very freeing way to live, I think.
Yes.
I think that upsets a lot of people because
it does.
I'm fine with where I am. I'm fine with the things that I'm doing. And it doesn't bother me that you're not okay with it because I am. And that's all that matters.
Yeah. And I think a lot of us tend to focus on the past and focus on the future.
Yeah.
Where now I feel like I am just living in the present and just enjoying the moment.
I mean, that's...
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
I know. But unfortunately most of us don't live that way, and it's really nice.
So I don't want this podcast to sound like all we're ever going to talk about is mushrooms, because that's not the case. I think what we have learned from our personal experiences is there has been like some type of rewiring, and we want to explore that. And with other avenues of healing, just having that moment where you see things for what they are, and it's almost like things click now.
Yes.
Okay. I'm like, is this making sense? Because, we're always taught like, love yourself, forgive yourself. Like you should be taking care of yourself. And we do that and we say that and we say we're doing it. But after mushrooms, something clicks where you're like, oh my God, I wasn't.
Yeah.
But now I am.
Yes, that's what it is.
It's like it's something connects that was disconnected before, and a veil is lifted where
Yeah.
you were wearing blinders before, just trying to go through life, go through the motions, get through another day. And now it's a very different, like, oh my God, I understand what that means now. Oh my God, that makes sense.
But that's hard to explain.
It is very hard to explain.
It's a very hard thing to explain because a lot of us, believe, if we don't post, we believe it. You should love yourself and talk to your kids so they love themselves. And the reality is a lot of us grew up with trauma or have had traumatic things happen to us. And so it's almost like we don't know how to do that. And even if we are doing certain things to do the work, it's do we really truly believe it within ourselves?
That's the hard
part. And that was
part.
me. I didn't at all.
You cannot. I will say this. The people out there who are looking for love or don't feel like they can express love, or, you have kids, you have children, you love your children, right? But
Absolutely.
How can you do that if you don't do it for yourself?
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing for me is once I loved myself, I remember writing my husband a letter after a second mushroom experience. And I wrote him a letter and I said, I've loved you for 15 years, but I didn't even love myself. And I didn't know what that looked like.
Right.
I loved you the best way I could, but it's going to be different now because I love myself differently. Oh. And it's so crazy that that's all it took.
Yeah.
Was having this experience and realizing that it wasn't an outward thing. It was an inward thing. I had to go in, I had to love myself before I could love anybody else authentically.
Yep. And for me too, because I thought, before I did my trip, I thought it would be about certain people or certain situations because that's just what I had in my head.
There's no way to explain what.
But then when I came out of it, I was like, it wasn't about her or him or this specific event that happened. The entire thing, it was about me.
Yeah.
It was almost me talking to me and me telling myself the things that I needed to hear. And I continue to tell myself frequently every day to this day that I got this and I can do it and I can do anything and I can do hard things and that I love myself, but truly I love myself.
Because you get it now.
Because I get it now.
You broke through to the other side.
Where before I would be okay, yeah, I would, again, go to therapy, journal, meditate, do energy work and say those things because I knew that that's what I needed to do. Where now I'm I believe it.
Yeah.
And I feel it.
It's a very different.
I don't know how to explain it. Besides that, it's so awkward to explain.
It's so hard to explain. I was just in my head thinking how can I do a visual for this? And I have a visual. Can I say it?
Yeah.
Okay. A mime, right?
Yeah.
They're fake hitting this wall, and let's pretend the wall is clear. You can see all these things on the other side that you're supposed to be doing in this happy life and this good life, and you're right there, you're right there banging on the wall, and you're so close. You can see them,
right?
You can hear them, you can post about them, you can preach them, but it's not until you break through that wall that it makes sense.
That's an amazing analogy.
And it clicks.
Yeah.
In our next few episodes, we'll do a deep dive into our personal experiences and go into detail about them because I think it's beautiful to hear it. And every time it's been a different lesson.
I know. I can't wait for my next one.
I'm I'm 2 in. I'm going to do another one soon. But it's interesting how each time it's something new that you learn, but also you learn so much more than that after.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I feel like I'm learning things about myself every day, or I just have, and I send them to you all the time, these epiphanies of oh my gosh, I did this then and I reacted this way then, but it was because, that was my inner child who was just looking for love or looking for, attention or validation. And now I'm realizing oh, you did this at that moment because you were just really it was just a hurt little kid. And that's what's crazy, kind of just understanding why I did the things that I did. And instead of, dwelling on those mistakes or I should have done that, it was just a learning experience, and I didn't have the tools.
Yeah.
But now I have the tools, and I'm proud to say that, I think I'm going to be the first person in my family who is breaking, certain toxic family patterns.
Yeah.
And so my son hopefully doesn't have to deal and won't have to deal with a lost mom and me projecting the things that I've struggled with onto him.
Your hurt onto him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a beautiful thing too. Like
Yeah.
I used to get so angry that I was 36 at the time and was learning all of these things at 36 with 3 kids. And I'm like, oh my God, I already fucked my kids up. Like I fucked them up. Like I was so far into motherhood at this point that I was like, how do I fix this? And it's been in the past couple of years, because I'm 38 now, realizing that by me doing this, they're watching,
They're watching you
They're
change, and they're
seeing
watching
this
you transform.
progression, and they are watching their father change and progress and grow, and they're watching our relationship change, and that is breaking a cycle.
Oh,
Like on
100%.
both
Absolutely.
sides.
Yeah.
And we'll get into this another time too, because I want to dive so far into this, but my husband is sober now because of mushrooms, and I don't want to tell his story. Maybe he'll talk about it. I don't know. You know how much of a talker he is.
I was like, oh, we'll see.
He's not. But I'm like, I want you to share, because it's so crazy how different both of us are in our lives, and you too. Like just that transformation. I'm so happy to share like this journey with you and with someone who.
And I'm proud of him. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of me.
I'm proud of you, bitch.
I'm so proud of us. And when you see someone, and I've watched you and you've watched me.
I've watched you.
Yeah. See them transform and truly become their authentic self and genuinely love who they are and be happy with where they are in their life while continuing to obviously evolve and continue to heal. That's
forever learning.
That's like, it like gives me goosebumps, because that's beautiful. That's what life should be about. With being business owners, a lot of people who knew us saw a very curated version of ourselves.
Yes.
So I'm very excited for people to see us kind of peel back the layers.
We're breaking down walls right now.
Yeah.
They're going to see some dark shit. They're going to hear some dark stuff.
Yeah.
But also some very happy stuff.
Right. I was going to say, there's overcoming that. And I think too, I want to add is a lot of people, when I've shared little tidbits about, my childhood or traumatic things that have happened to me, and, I share it on my social media, that people automatically are like, are you okay? And is everything all right? Because it's taboo to talk about you struggling. But I also think it's a beautiful thing to be vulnerable and to be open and to share your struggles and how you overcame them and how you grew as a person. I don't think that should be such a taboo thing to talk about.
Absolutely not. There's so many of us out there like that. Like,
we all have our shit.
We all have our shit.
Yeah.
And even what you see on Instagram is it's not real sometimes.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's not. So
oftentimes it's very much so a highlight reel.
It almost makes you feel like you're not okay, and they are, but that's not the case. Like they're also not okay.
Yeah.
And it's not in a bad, like everybody has their shit. So we just want to kind of unpack some of it and talk about what's helped us and kind of get into subjects that we don't even really know much about, but it's going to be interesting to learn about them.
Yeah.
Like energy work. What else? EMDR therapy.
Yep.
Psychedelics. We want to talk a lot about that.
Trauma in the form of abuse that we've gone through. We've had very different experiences on the kinds of abuse that we've dealt with, and narcissism. All that. Empaths, and
mental health. Just all of it. It seems like it's such a small box, but it's such a big box to unpack.
We've got like legit about 150 topics to discuss. So we'll be here a minute.
We'll be here a while, you guys. So we're excited to share with you and have you all on this journey with us and get to know us a little bit more. And hopefully we'll get to know some more about you guys and ourselves, because that's kind of cool. Like where you have those moments where you're like, holy shit, I just had this thought. And that's why I do this thing.
Yep.
And now it makes sense.
Yep.
So we're going to have a lot of those moments too. And we are just excited to share all of this with you guys.
Yeah.
So
to kind of wrap it up, I guess we could share our social media.
Yeah. So we are on Instagram as, well, we couldn't do See You on the Other Side, could we?
No, we're See You on the Other Side podcast. And I know that's a very long IG handle.
Yeah. We thought about like shortening it and doing like the letters.
SYOTOS. Here's how it sounds.
Soyotos.
But
yeah, no, it's See You on the Other Side.
Yep.
That's what it is.
See You on the Other Side podcast.
And then what's our TikTok? Is it See You on the Other Side pod?
Yes.
Because it wouldn't let us do cast.
No, too long. So yes, our Instagram is See You on the Other Side podcast. Our TikTok is See You on the Other Side pod.
And we don't have anything else right now, do we?
No, we don't.
It's okay. It's gonna be a lot. It's gonna be a lot to handle. We're gonna be a lot. So, if you guys want to hear more about our stories and everything we want to share, and we're gonna have people on too. It's not gonna just be us all the time. It's gonna be us like a lot of the time. But
yes, but we'll be interviewing experts on specific topics, and
we can't wait to hear from you guys and meet all of you through the internet.
Hey.
And we'll
see you on the other side.